This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, very well. We'll let you resolve that first, and I'll recuse myself as I usually do.
Okay.
So first of all, we started the recording. I wanted to note that this is a virtual meeting pursuant to orders from Governor Cuomo, and the fact that Village Hall is closed to the public at this time. We are meeting virtually. Notice of this meeting has been posted on the Village website, along with our agenda and meeting packet. And any member of the public is welcome to join and observe our discussions tonight. I see we've had a couple people already join us, so welcome to all of you. But I just wanted to mention that that is why we're meeting by video conference, is due to the coronavirus pandemic. And with that said, I'll make a motion to open the meeting tonight.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the record can show that it is December 16th and it is 6:33 p.m. We've opened the meeting. All 5 members of the planning board are present, and all 5 voted to open the meeting. So with that said, our next typical item is conflicts of interest disclosure. I'll disclose my typical conflict of interest with 75 Monroe, which has been, I've stated many times before. I'll recuse myself from all discussions on that. I've made my opinions on the project known long before I joined this board. And so I'll continue to abstain from any discussion, deliberations, and votes regarding that project. Does anyone else have any other conflict of interest to disclose?
No.
No.
Okay. So with that, I will go ahead and leave the meeting temporarily and let the rest of the board discuss 75 Monroe. Susan, I presume you're going to be the acting chairperson and run the portion of the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, if someone wants to just send me a text message or something like that when you guys are done, and I'll rejoin the meeting.
I'll do that.
Thanks, Justin. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. On November 16th, we received a letter from Canalside Properties, Pittsburgh Canalside Properties, requesting an extension to comply with condition 20 of the site plan review. This isn't the first time we've received this request. And so nothing has changed physically. Since 2015, we have granted this request. I see no reason to not to extend it the time allowed for another year. Dave, since you're kind of newer to this, do you have any questions?
No, I think I was there the last time we approved it, so no.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I wasn't there, I was somehow understood what was going on.
So great. Chris or Brian, anything that you want to would like to address the board or have in the minutes?
I'll introduce myself for the new members of the board. I'm Brian Powers with Mark IV on behalf of Pittsburgh Canalside Properties. And I think we outlined everything in our letter as we've done in years past. And we would just make ourselves available to answer any questions if there's any questions.
Joanne, Justin, any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for coming and for the letter. This is all as I understood. We've offered the extensions in the past, and I don't see any significant changes this year either.
Susan, you may want to just open the public hearing, see if there's any public comment before you go much further.
Oh, okay. So I move that we open this meeting for any public, open the meeting for any public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Oh, everyone seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So the public meeting is open. Is there anyone out there who would like to comment on this request for an extension of time? If not, it looks like not. I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so then we do have a resolution. It contains now 5 whereases. If you don't mind, I would like to cut to the chase on this one and simply make a resolution that PCP's request for a 1-year extension of time to comply with condition 20 of the November 11th, 2014 final site plan approval for Westport Crossing be granted because there are no substantial changes and circumstances that would require this board to deny such an extension. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Justin? Aye.
Aye.
So the extension is granted.
Thank you.
I just had a procedural question on the extension here. Should we specify a particular date? I noticed the current extension goes until December 31st. I understand this is 1 year, so does that start January 1st and go to the end of 2021, or does it start today and then go to December 16th of 2021?
It starts on December 31st, 2020 and goes to December 31st, 2021.
Okay.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you all very much. Have very happy holidays.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
You too.
You too.
Guys, take care.
Likewise. Yep, thank
We
you.
do. Thank you.
Justin, do you want to give Justin a thing?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
And Susan, I'll add those dates to the whereas clause, the final wherefore clause, and I'll
Okay.
send it back to you so you can sign it with the dates in there.
Okay.
Mindy, I have a question about the resolution. A couple of times it says the zoning board and not the planning board. In the beginning
You're
and at
right.
the
It should be the planning board, right? I found it in a couple of places, but not all of them. I will fix that when I
Okay.
add the dates. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, thanks, Joanne.
I just texted Justin.
Joanne, thank you for the treats.
Oh, you're welcome.
We're enjoying them.
Good. Good.
We won't be able to fit out out of the doors pretty soon with the cookies
I
and
know. I've been doing a lot of cooking.
Text worked.
Okay, I've returned.
Okay.
Your share back.
I see Mr. Powers have left, so I guess he must be satisfied with that matters are concluded. So, okay. So the next item to discuss was the application from the Collins about the parking variance. We had a brief discussion during our workshop session, where we got a little bit of an update from the building inspector, but I think it would be fair for the applicants are online now. So Steve, can you update everybody involved as to what's going on with that and the conclusions of your code review?
Muted. Right, there I am. Yeah, the application variance application has been modified or added to ask, and for everybody that came on, there needs to be a variance for a parking lot in what is technically the front yard by definition of our code of what a front yard is in front of the buildings. So that's been added to the variance, and then the actual numbers of what exists for parking spaces currently with the change that was already created this summer. There exists 133 spaces. With the use that's there right now requires 149 spaces based on the occupancy. And there's already only 133, and then with the pavilion would require 155. So the variance application has been asked for a relief of 22 spaces of the total existing property. And that's where we're at. The application was modified and given to Linda. She made notices that will go in the paper. I'm hoping or asking that this could, if everything's in order, and you get a final drawing, that this could be looked at in a January meeting as far as for the site plan. The variance is all in one.
Okay. So that is the conclusion of your code review for the parking lot. So thank you very much, Steve, for going through that and updating it on us. I do see we have a trustee online. Renee, I don't know if you're available to talk at all. I hadn't heard any updates from the trustees recently. Because we had talked, I've had a few conversations about a couple potential code changes for the trustees. And so with the parking being deficient, the two options are to apply for a variance or for the trustees to amend the code. And I know that before this application even come in, we've talked to the trustees about the challenges of finding parking along the waterfront here for these businesses between Sheen Place and the water, because there's nowhere to put parking. So we've had discussions from, I don't know, a year and a half ago, or maybe even further, about what can we do about getting code to make sense for some of these businesses. And then there was the other discussion we had about amending the zoning code to include Lock 32 in the Tavern Overlay District, which appears to have been a mistake that it was left out, as far as I can tell, because commentary we had from the trustees last fall was that they were in agreement that Collins property should have been in there. So we thought, it looked to me like that was a error in drawing the map, but I may be wrong about that. I don't know what all went into the zoning map and the delineations of it. So I don't know if Renee, I see her online.
Yeah, I'm here. I was here just to observe. I let the mayor know that you all are talking about it, because I know he's been speaking with Steve, and I believe these are two separate issues.
Two very separate issues, correct?
Yeah, it's my, and I know, I don't know, I was here to listen. I don't want to speak for the whole board, but we did, you can see from our previous meetings that we were very clear about these being two separate issues. And I know that the mayor is planning to have us meet to discuss some of the zoning issues, but I don't believe that's been scheduled yet.
Okay, so they're still under discussions. I hadn't seen any proposals or anything, so I didn't know where that stood, but I was hoping that the trustees could make whatever efforts to kind of let us know before our next meeting as to where this is going.
Where what is going?
Well, we have to, so there's two things. There's the
I'm not.
the parking.
Yep.
Yep.
So the Collins have two options to move forward with the code concerns. One is amending code, and two is a variance. So
Yep.
they've applied for a variance, which we'll consider.
Right.
But
That's what's before you tonight, right? Is the variance.
the variance is not before us yet. We haven't seen the application yet. And I was just discussing this with Steve a little bit yesterday. Steve just recently completed some of his code review for the project, and parking was one of the things that it took some time for him to look at, because he had to look at all the various buildings and what's going on in each one and figure out what code said they required and so on. So I know Steve has been working on a variety of matters with this project over the last few weeks. So I think he's concluded his code review, and there's the two concerns he has. And so anyway, at least speaking on behalf of the board, it would be helpful for us to know as to whether the trustees are going to amend the code or whether the variance is going to be the solution if the zoning board is compelled to grant that. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, all right. One of the issues I see here, and I'm sure Casey and Jenny could weigh in on this, but I believe the code change will take a longer period of time to accomplish. I think it's something that needs to be done, and I'm not so sure that Renee even was aware. Bob, I talked to the mayor in regards to the parking. The idea just came up in regards to, how to solve the issue down in the Shane Place area because of its substandard parking. It always has been, always will be compared to the use. So the thought was, because the code right now requires one seat or one parking space for every 3 seats in a restaurant. Which that area is, the restaurants are a very large portion of it. So if that code, because other municipalities have amended, smaller municipalities have amended their code to allow a different level. My suggestion and a solution to this would be to do a 1 in 4. One parking space for every 4 seats, which would then allow the area, based on the current use and the current total use down there, to actually have 8 extra spaces prior to the pavilion going in. So if that was amended, the pavilion would not create more than what's necessary for the total parking. They wouldn't need a variance. But I'm not sure how long the code change would take, and the business owners down there, I'm sure, would like to see, if possible, would like to see this to be able to be started and being built in February, so that when the spring came and March came, that the possibility on warm days to start and open up and utilize the space would help them save what they have down there. And I'm not so sure the code change, I think it has to go through the state, and there's a larger time frame associated with it. So that's where we're at. We're trying to figure out a way to most expeditiously accomplish a change down there that will help the businesses out.
Can I ask a quick question of Mindy? If the board were to indicate intent to change, would that be sufficient, or would it have to go through the whole process of going to Albany, which seems, kind of more mechanical?
Yeah, Albany's at the very end, but the short answer is no, that's not enough, because the code isn't amended until there's been, they'd have to publish the proposed amendment, they'd have to conduct a public hearing, they'd have to pass a resolution, and then send the resolution to Albany.
Okay.
Filing, and the amendment would be effective as of filing with the Department of State.
Thanks.
So, Mindy, that's roughly probably a 90-day process, 60 to 90 days at least.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 60 to 90 days.
Okay, so they have to have, the trustees have to have a proposal. They have to do a public hearing for the code review. They have to go through that meeting and that process. They got to go through their seeker review, which takes at least 30 days. County planning takes 30 days. So from when they decide they want to move forward with it, you're realistically looking at least a minimum of what, 45 days to get it started and so on. So it would take a little bit of time.
And I think my wish is to hope these businesses, help these businesses out. The one thing I do, and I know Casey's on. Casey, you can hear me, right? You and I had discussed, I think, and Renee's on still, but I think the tavern overlay issue still becomes an issue for Casey if the zoning district is not amended. Is that correct, Casey?
So just because the way that we're splitting up the funding for this project, all the businesses are going to put in money to help fund the project that will then obviously turn around and use it. So I'm very hesitant normally, but especially in the environment that we're in right now, to commit to spending money on something that I'm not assured that I can actually use or my customers can actually use. I spoke with Mayor Corby today, and he had let me know that there might be an option for, he agreed that the tavern overlay was a mistake and that they're going to go down the path to correct that. And then Steve and Justin, like you said, there is a significant time frame associated with that he let me know. So he made reference to a variance possibility where we could get a variance to assure use while the trustees were going through the process to officially change that. But I'm not sure. He said that to me in passing. I may have misunderstood, but Steve, I wanted to bring it to you to see if he had a similar conversation with you or if I misunderstood what he was recommending.
Yeah, he didn't impart that to me, Casey, but Mindy might be able to weigh in on that. I saw her kind of her eyebrow raised when you said that. So
Yeah, I know I can't control my visual responses sometimes. If what you're seeking is a use variance, it's a much more difficult lift than an area variance that requires some substantial dollars and cents proof. And if there's any other way at all to do it, you should pursue the other way.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
That's all I'll say about that. And this is something I think to happen. It seems to me that it would make sense to do the parking code change and the other code change for the tavern districts, together at the same time. I mean, that's just my 2 cents.
Is it
is amending the map for the tavern overlay the same time frame as a regular code change?
Right, same process. You're amending part of the code.
All right.
You're just amending the map part, not the text part.
Yeah, if this gets forwarded, Casey, by the time the building would be ready to be used, you would have your change in the zoning district for the use.
And that would be great. Yeah, that would be fantastic. And like I said, Bob said that it wouldn't be an issue. It just like you guys echoed it. He just stressed on the amount of time that it would take. And it sounds like a process that hasn't really begun yet. So yeah, as long as I have that reassurance that it's processing, I would feel much better just for myself moving forward. But that was a concern. So that's good to know that it would be the same process.
Yeah, and the thing Bob was concerned about, because we talked about doing the whole Jenny's whole property, but the other side of the street where Simply Crepes is next to a residential neighborhood. So that's the issue, that they don't want to include the whole property, but you and Aladdin's and their parking lot on that side would be, should be in the tavern overlay.
That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes some sense. So one of the things I'm been concerned about is I know our code says that Casey's property was legally established And he got a special use permit, and then they changed the zoning code after his business was established, which basically made it not allowed for having a beer only establishment or a wine only establishment. So he would legally went in, got all of his permits, and that was great. And then the code changed. But then what our code says is you can't expand a business that is no longer permitted. So that's the problem and the concern here. And what we've heard is that all of the multiple businesses over there would like to use this. And my concern is without this code change, we may have to put a condition of approval if we were to choose to do so, that this business cannot be, that this pavilion cannot be used by Lock 32. That's one of my concerns here is I think the code kind of drives us towards that. But I think that what everybody said here is the code seems to be an error and this should be corrected, and it would be awfully nice if we can get that fixed. Or at least the zoning map seems to be an error. I'm not going to say the code seems to be an error. So just the boundary line to that tavern district. And I know the trustees will have to go through that process, but I think that would really help us to, if that was decided, we wouldn't have to put any conditions in our approval. We wouldn't have to look at that. So I was really hoping that issue would be taken away from us and it would no longer be a concern. So I'm sharing that partially because I see Trustee Stetzer is online. And we would like to, it would be very helpful if the trustees could at least take some urgency with this and move this towards where they want it to go with both issues.
That's what I'm here for, to bring back news. Steve's been working with the mayor, so I apologize. I'm on mute because my dog is barking a lot, but I'm here.
So the request to the trustees is, can you schedule a public hearing tomorrow for this stuff? If not, that's okay. But I mean, get a move on this. So our next meeting is a little over 30 days away. You could actually, I mean, get this mostly resolved by then, should you be willing to do so. I'm not going to speculate on that.
I'm with you. I will send an email tonight and see what I can do to help.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Collins.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Stetzer, for assuring us that you'll do what you can. I feel the real need to make a plea because, of course, this focus has been on Lock 32 because of the tavern overlay issue, but I hope we don't lose sight of that the intent of this is to assist a number of businesses in continuing to survive. And Casey has shared with me individually that the only reason Lock 32 is making it is because of their other location in Bushnell's Basin. The Pittsford location is suffering without the ability to continue to do outside. And likewise, in speaking with the owner of Simply Crepes, he's surviving because of the North Carolina business. He's not doing well because of the Pittsburgh business. And so I am certainly not literate or knowledgeable in code versus variance. I would just like to continue to make the plea that we do what we can to assist all of these businesses. And so we miraculously today, we signed a lease with a brand new retailer on Shane Place. I can't believe she's willing to take the risk in this time period, but I think it's because of all that the area has to offer. And anything we can do to give these tenants, our businesses, a lifeline, I think, you know, that's my motivation in pushing forward with this. I did ask, and I certainly want to ask this group if there is any concern or problem if we go ahead and at least run our plans by the Historic Preservation Board, not for their official review yet, because I know that would probably be considered jumping the gun. But if I do an information only conversation with them, so that perhaps in my my optimism that the trustees could move forward, and then we could come back to this group in January. Would we have some sort of jump start with the Historic Preservation Board? And I just want to make sure that I'm not stepping on toes by making that request. I just keep trying to brainstorm how we can continue to be doing something productive to move this forward in the background while we're waiting for the code and so forth to catch up.
Yeah, Jenny, there's no problem in you coming in for an information only for the next Historic Preservation Board, as long as Mr. Pope gets a final configuration of the building. I know you're still working on the sides, you know, how to enclose it. So if we come up with a final iteration, I know the board will at least do a initial review of it, not an official one till the planning board has, you know, they cannot do an official one till the planning board has, or we've alleviated any of the variances issues, but they most certainly would look at it as an information only.
Well, and so that was part of my intent and hope, is that they could weigh in on all of that. So, you know, we have 2 or 3 options as far as what we would want to do, as far as an enclosure, partial enclosure, full enclosure. And I don't want to get so far down the road spending my money with the architect if it's not something that's going to be acceptable to the Historic Preservation Group. I would rather get their input from the get-go and not waste time and money, quite frankly. I want to put the money into the structure, not into spinning our wheels with design possibilities. I want to know what will be acceptable to them or not. So it would be helpful to be able to do that.
Yeah, so if Mr. Pope comes up with a couple of different iterations, that can be presented information only, and they would steer us in a direction that I believe that would be approvable by them.
Okay.
So I think talking about the process going forward is good. I think it's very helpful for everybody involved to get any concerns and issues out there as early on in the process, so that things can be amended and get it all done all at once. So we haven't looked at this variance request yet, so I don't want to comment on that. We're here for information only. I wanted to give some guidance as to how at least I'm thinking this process is going to go, and others on the board can speak up if they want. But we have another meeting. Our next meeting is coming up in January, and we're getting everything published for that to take a look at the variance issues, if those still exist. If the trustees are going to make the code change, that would be great too. I think that'll also take a little bit of time, but knowing what direction this needs to go would be very helpful. So I think we would take a look at variances in our next meeting, and we would start taking a look at the site plan. Variance and the code issues need to be resolved first before we can get through the site plan. And so what I'm thinking at the site plan meeting is we're going to take a look at it. I don't really think we're going to look much at the architecture of the building. That's what the preservation board is going to do. So if they think the building they want to tweak a dimension on it or something, or change how something looks, I think that's a great idea to go before them and get some clarity to that. I mentioned last probably 2 meetings where you were here that we'll take a look at drainage and lighting and landscaping and some issues like that. I know Steve has already been working with the applicant. He's taking a look at what some of the code requirements are. So he's taking a look at the screening requirements in code, I know, which is that parking lots are supposed to have some plantings around them to kind of block the view of the cars. So it sounded like he's working with the applicant to get that resolved, and that requires a little bit of help with the Canal Corporation, I heard, because he needed to shift the location of the building. So that looks like that's, to me, that sounds like that's going in a good direction. I'm glad that's in progress. I can't speak as to what the board is going to think of everything about that. We may ask, can you change a plant or something like that? But that's all a solvable problem, I presume. We haven't taken a look at lighting yet. Again, if a light fixture is needed because it's not bright enough in some areas, that's just a minor tweak to the plan, which I would assume we'd get to. So I'm hoping when we get to the site plans at our next meeting, that we'll take a look at it. And if we have any concerns, we would bring that up and you'd be able to make some appropriate tweaks to the plan. And then we could, and you'd get input from the HPB and the preservation board and what they have. So then we'd be able to get all of the changes we want all enumerated, and then hopefully they can all get done and we could get this resolved come February. So I'm thinking February is a time that with everyone's participation and help that this could be all resolved. I'm hoping.
That would be a really nice way for us moving forward. I did just want to comment, and Steve was very instrumental in this as well. He and I have both spoken with the Canal Corp, as you mentioned, and they are in agreement with the location such that it does it is positioned slightly onto the Canal Corp property, but they have given the approval of it's a pending until the village approves it. So they're okay with it if the village of Pittsford is okay with it. But we have submitted all of the documentation to them that they need. They're simply waiting for the village to weigh in.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any comments about this at this time?
Yeah, just in terms of the scheduling, Justin, if what we're, it sounds like there's an agreement that we would prefer to use to avoid the use variance route, and it seems like that makes sense. I was just wondering if we're going to review the site plan, could we give site plan approval if there's going to be an upcoming legislative change, or do we have to wait before those code changes are adopted in order to approve the site plan?
Well, Mindy can weigh in on this, but I think we would be in a position to maybe to make a conditional approval, but I think the condition of that approval might be that Lock 32 cannot use this new pavilion and they cannot expand their business. And it sounded like that may or may not be part of the intent of this, is for them to use it, but our attorney can weigh in on it. So, I mean, that's how I think it might be able to go forward. But I'm not sure anyone wants to do a conditioned approval with that condition in there.
Yeah, two things. One is to respond to Justin Lightgib's comment about whether we can review something while the code is undergoing changes. The answer is yes. You'll need to apply whatever code is in effect at the time that the application is before you. The other issue has to do with what I heard was that this board doesn't want to hear a use variance. I mean, the board has to hear whatever application is presented to it. So if Block 32 decides that it can meet the legal requirements for a use variance, and we should make an application for a use variance, and the comments that made by Ms. Collins suggest that even though it's generally a heavy lift, under these circumstances, it may be something that could be done because of the, the financial hardship that's being suffered during the pandemic. Justin, did I address all the questions that you had? Was there something I missed?
No, I think that makes it clear. So we couldn't condition our approval on legislation being changed. You're saying we would have to consider it under the legislation that's in effect when we review the site plan. That's the only way we could do it.
Yeah, it's a preferred way. I mean, it's kind of meaningless to grant an approval based upon something, a change in law that may never happen.
Right.
Just a quick question. This is on use variance versus the zoning change to incorporate the tavern district. If you granted a use variance and then they change the code, does the use variance remain independent from the zoning change? So if it becomes, so I guess what I'm saying is, if it becomes a use variance and they can, serve liquor as they are now into that pavilion, and then they change the code to also allow it, but sometime way down the road they change the zone to not allow it anymore, does the use variance remain? Or does it not matter? Because I guess what I'm saying is
it probably doesn't matter.
Okay.
But
the reason
more approvals are always better than less, right?
Well, the reason I'm asking is because we could potentially grant a use variance, understanding that they're moving forward with the zoning application update or the zoning code change, right? To give them the tavern overlay.
No, the use variance,
what the code may go on, Susan.
no, I was just going to say the use variance would be based on the current code, on the code in effect.
That's what I'm saying. So, but you could grant them a use variance now, give them the opportunity to do it, with the understanding that the trustees are still going to move forward with adding them to the tavern overlay.
Right. So then it's kind of you can do it. You can really do it. You know.
Yeah, but you can do it right still.
Right.
But if we know they're moving down that direction and we're thinking about why wouldn't we grant a use variance if in aggregate we're moving down a zoning change anyway, if we can do it faster to help them get there sooner, why wouldn't we consider that?
You would still need to meet all the criteria of a use variance. So the applicant would still need to come forward to you with dollars and cents proof of the financial hardship that cannot be alleviated in any other way.
Okay. So
the fact that you can't use the use variance as like a stopgap measure between now and the time that they change the code.
Okay, fair enough.
And a use variance is also a type 1 seeker application and imposes the same kind of deadline concerns as a code change. So, and it's actually harder to prove than a code change. So they got to go through.
It's a lot harder to prove.
Yeah.
They have to go through and basically prove that they can't be profitable under any uses allowed by the current code, and they need relief from all of the code because there's no other business that can operate there. It's a pretty tall standard. We looked at this once before, and we actually spent, I think, months. Newcomb's application, didn't we spend several months looking at it?
Okay.
Yep. It's a very heavy lift. It's not impossible, but it's a very heavy lift.
This drives an email tomorrow to even greater importance, to get that process started as soon as possible and hit every deadline at the right time.
And I had a question too, in regards to Casey and Lock 32, and you talk about putting a modifier on the, that they can't use it. Is that really, I mean, wouldn't that be a code issue as far as me and enforcement versus the board saying, well, Simply Crepes can use it, Cold Tower can't, Aladdin's can. I mean, is that a planning and zoning issue, or is that a code enforcement issue in regards to Casey's use of the place, as far as trying to put a stipulation that they can put a pavilion up, but Casey can't use it under the current code?
Right. I mean, so it could be a condition of approval, and then it would be up to the code enforcement officer to determine how to enforce that condition.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hoping we didn't need to go down any of this path and talking to all the lawyers and figuring out what permutations and what all this means. That since it's just a mistake, we can just fix it and move on. And I mean, that's what I thought we could do. If the trustees are unwilling to amend it, then we'll have to go down that path.
I think if I know Renee's on here, but I think the right poking would get this process for the code change for tavern overlay in process, and I think that would make Casey feel a little more comfortable in moving forward. As long as the trustees have put it on the table and started the process, I think he would feel a lot more comfortable in moving forward, and so would Mrs. Collins.
Yeah, Steve, you're absolutely right on my end. And when I've spoken to the trustees, when we've had information meetings with them, and I've spoken to Bob Corby privately, it's been an overwhelming. It was a mistake. We want to fix it. My only concern is that it's now been a couple of months and the process hasn't begun. So just in such a large investment, like I said, it's just unsettling to commit myself, not for the Collins property, but just for my own input into it. It's unsettling. But yeah, some movement in that and seeing that it's processing and going forward, I would feel much better and much more willing to move forward with a financial contribution as well.
Yep, and I hope you understand that I have been poking the bear.
Steve, you've been great. Yep, you've been great. And really, this whole board has been great. And I really do appreciate, David, you chiming in and trying to get creative, and Mindy, you walking through some options for us. It's very much appreciated. That effort of just the conversation is tremendous. So I know it's a process. I know we all wish it would go quicker. And unfortunately, I know that as well. But if we can get the trustees on board and all of you can help do a little poking and kind of throw the ball back in their court, hopefully we can get this thing going. And like Jenny alluded to earlier, our place in Bushnell's Basin is still doing tremendous outdoor service, which is great, considering the weather. But just that ability to have a fire pit and a cover has made all the difference. So it's been going really well. So, I look forward to the spring and think if we do have some weather break in March, not just myself, but all these restaurants, I think people will come out, in droves, even if it's that Rochester spring 50 that feels like 80. I think we'll see a bunch of people come out. So.
Yes, Steve, I'm going to send an email right now. I'll include you. I know Casey and I talked about this week as well. I'm doing what I can to try to encourage these discussions to begin as well. We want to support our businesses and figure this out quickly.
All right, I'm very grateful you're on this tonight, Renee, so that I can ask you to poke.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention one other thing as well, because sometimes it's not as clear to applicants where the blockers lie. But with a use variance, this is something that New York State tells us we've got to do. It's not village code. If you look at the documents from the Department of State, they say the showing required for entitlement to a use variance is therefore intended to be a difficult one. So I just wanted to assure you that we're not trying to make that hard. It's something that we have to do.
I just wanted to mention that while I know because of the tavern overlay issue, we have gone back to Casey and Lock 32 multiple times. If we can't be inclusive of all of the tenants in the Collins Shane Place properties, I would have to do a lot of consideration about whether it makes sense to do it at all, because then it not only becomes an enforcement issue for Steve, but it becomes in some regard an enforcement issue for a property owner. And if my attitude and the attitude for my father for 40 years before that is, it's kind of, we're all in this together, and to single out one building or one tenant and say, all of you can use this, but not you, I'm not sure it would any longer make any sense. So I very much appreciate the advocacy that all of you are suggesting. And Trustee Stetzer, if I can also, as the property owner, the taxpayer, be communicating and advocating more strongly with the trustees and with Mayor Corby, I'm happy to. He met with us in August on the property saying that this was a great idea and let's move forward. But I am certainly willing to do more and put our concerns in writing or have additional conversations, if that makes sense, to help the process along.
Yeah, the only other thing I would raise as a just point of information is that a property owner can make an application to a municipality to request a change in zoning. It doesn't have to originate from the municipal board.
So you're saying, Mindy, that support would help perhaps encourage the board to move forward faster than we're moving right now, and show that it's not just the planning board or not just an internal discussion, but just lend credence to what we're doing here. That it's I wouldn't hurt, right?
Couldn't hurt.
Well,
Right.
it would make this a type 1 action instead in seeker, so it would elevate the entire application and increase the
then it would.
application fee. So then we have to do an LWRP review and all of that. So it would be a little more. I mean, given that the planning board and trustees have been discussing this as part of the last code review before this application came in. All these matters have been up for discussion, but this new application, it seems to fit in with prior comments that have been made. So I think it
seems everyone's on board. We just need to get things scheduled. And I think, oh, sorry, we're both talking at the same time. I'm sorry, Justin.
I stepped talking. Go ahead. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring up that this has been a discussion that's gone on back and forth between our boards for a while. So it's just it would benefit our application if we can move these along. And I think Renee, Trustee Stetzer here, has heard loud and clear that people would appreciate moving this along fairly quickly.
Yeah, but yes. I think previously, oh boy, you're quiet again and I'm talking over you. I can't tell if you're done yet. Okay. These are things, yes, we have been discussing them. I know that the mayor wanted to make sure that we included the planning board when and Steve may know more because he's been talking to the mayor this week, but I will do my part to move these discussions along.
I think we're on the same page, and I do know that the board and the village as a whole is looking to help everybody out here, Jenny and Casey. It certainly would not expect anybody to move forward without having everybody included in this. It's something I will keep pushing. I know Renee, now that she's been in here and heard this, like I said, she could do a little poking from her side. I will get a hold of Jenny tomorrow. And then we will look at making a formal request to the board for that zoning change. So it puts a timestamp and a forward motion on it. All right, that seemed workable.
I thought though that Justin mentioned that doing that could potentially slow things
down
because of the secret type 1 and so forth. So I may have gotten lost somewhere in this conversation.
I think you can talk to the trustees all you want. If you fill out a formal application, that may change things. I don't know what our attorney thinks. I mean, like I said, these discussions have existed for a while before this application came along, which is what I think is kind of a difference maker in this regard. If you were to fill out a formal application to do this, that would be for the whole project. We'd have to do an environmental review on the whole matter. Our last discussion of the constructing the building as you're proposing was commercial structures under, I believe, 4,000 square feet are a type 2 action in seeker. And so that would exempt you from the environmental review, and that would prevent us from doing the LWRP review, which the real difference between those is additional work for the boards in making findings, but also it gives a 30-day deadline and some time to coordinate these reviews. Mindy, if you want to chime in anything else, by all means.
Yeah, I was gonna. I'm glad you mentioned that, Justin, because I agree that it's really just more work for the board. Can you hear me? I have to put one in the charger. Yeah, I think that conceptually, even though it would be a type 1 action, that you would just be asking the board to correct an apparent error in the zoning code and to make some fairly small changes. It I think a neg deck would be very supportable under these circumstances. And, you know, the LWRP review is what it is, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we ultimately got to make more findings and do things. It does kick in a few deadlines. It's
Right.
doable. But like you
Right.
said, that would force the trustees to take action. If there is an application before them for a code change, it's not optional for them to address it. They're required to address it.
Right, and that's why I suggested it. Yeah, I mean, one way or another, somebody's got to light a fire here.
Then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to ask her to put in a formal application. I'm going to let Renee work her magic. Renee. And
I
we'll
don't
go.
have any magic, Steve. I hate to tell you. I will send an email, a magic email.
Okay. Susan, speak.
Well, wonder if, Steve, you and Jenny wrote a letter just saying, you know, we're contemplating a formal application. You know, without submitting a formal application, just say, you know, if something doesn't move along, then we'll submit a formal application. Would that have any push power?
It probably wouldn't hurt for Jenny to write an email to all the trustees and just say, look, this is something that's necessary in order for this to accomplish for all the business down here. If it's not all, you know, if it's not all, it may not happen. So I appreciate, you know, the board, you know, getting on the horse and moving forward this as soon as possible to allow these businesses to survive. You know, rather than put in the formal application, but put in a request, you know, an email to every board member. If you want to send me an email, Jenny, then I can forward it to all the trustees. Renee said she's going to send an email out. So I think if we, you know, kind of go at different sides and put a little pressure and request, it might jumpstart this a little quicker.
As I said before, I'm happy to do that. I can speak with you to make sure I'm using the right terminology for what I'm asking for, but I'm happy to do that. I mean, yes, I want to see it move forward.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll do the email route. Renee's going to send an email, and we'll put the urgency on it. And if they have to call a special meeting and get the process going, I think that they would probably be willing, for the sake of the businesses in Shane Place, to do that in order to help these people survive.
Yes, I know that everyone wants to work on this, so I think it's simply a matter of getting a little momentum here and helping out. And I'm willing to help and coordinate. And I just sent the email. So Justin, I CC'd you so that you'll see it.
All right, Renee, well, I got you on here too, and I know this isn't part of this meeting, but when you get a moment tomorrow, please call me in regard to another issue down at the canal area.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. The Collins or Casey, do you have any other questions regarding the process? I mean, we can't be committal as to prejudge any applications, but I wanted to make sure that we at least have a vision for how this is going to go. So it sounds like we've been having some discussions with the trustees, which we just went over. There's a variance application, which we'll take a look at our next meeting. And then there's a site plan. And at least I would hope that at that next meeting, we'd be able to get through identifying any remaining concerns we may have so they can be all addressed. I can't guarantee you that we're going to necessarily vote or approve anything at our next meeting. But I would at least hope that we could be moving in the direction to at least have all of everybody's concerns out there so it can all be addressed so it can come to a conclusion, hopefully in February if everyone's willing. So.
Can I ask a question of the board, of you, Justin? That if, because of the time frames, we have to have your decision and on the variances or variances approved prior to the HPB approving. I think the process here, they would like to be able to get approvals in February. If everything was in order in January and you couldn't vote on it that day because of some minor changes, would the board be willing to look at maybe an extra meeting in January so that the decision could be made prior to the first, the meeting for the HPB in February? So they would get approval right at the beginning of February. The construction could start right after that, and hopefully be able to utilize the facility in March.
I'm good.
Go ahead, Susan.
No, I just said yeah, we have lots of special meetings. Let's start the new year with a special meeting.
What else do we have to do?
Yeah.
That's great.
And this will be a very special meeting.
Just don't tell Dorothea I suggested it, okay?
Well, yeah, we've had plenty of special meetings. We've often
Or Linda. Or Linda.
Or Linda.
Holiday.
So,
holiday season.
Linda, when is our meeting scheduled for January?
The 20th.
20th. Okay, and that is a Wednesday, I see.
Yeah.
So, and when is the HPB meeting after that?
The 11th is the January, when they're going for information only.
Okay, so in February, when is the February meeting of the HPB?
Oh boy, I don't have my schedule. It should be the second Monday unless it is a holiday.
Okay, so that would be the 8th of February. So if we have a meeting on January 20th, that's almost 3 weeks until the 8th of February. I mean, we've been often been willing to not keep people waiting longer than they have to and have some special meetings on occasion to move things along. Does anyone have any objections to having one like the last week of January or something like that? I assume we can come to an agreeable date.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Good.
Yeah, so Ms. Collins, I believe the way this would go then is we'll take a look at it at our next meeting in January, enumerate any concerns we may have, if we want to ask for some tweaks to the plan, we'll do that. I would hope that I can't speak in advance as to what the board wants, but assuming that they're fairly minor things, you could get that turned around fairly quickly. We could schedule a special meeting and hopefully have that resolved fairly early in February or late January. So it sounds like we're willing to move along to that schedule.
That would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much for your flexibility.
Well, we do this for a lot of applicants, and we don't have an enormous number of projects going on right now. So some of this is dependent on our workload. So, but thank you for the compliments. So we're happy to do what we can. I think this fairly well resolves things with this application. We're still want to know what the trustees are going to do, which isn't going to be resolved tonight. So based on that, we'll presumably Steve will be in further contact with Ms. Collins and Casey Dunleavy and let them know as to what's going on. And until then, we'll review this application for our January meeting. So I'll suggest that we conclude this item and we'll move on our agenda.
Thank you all.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to jump off, but thank you very much. Have a
Good
great night.
night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Do I need to stay on? I jumped on just for this, and I'm in my running gear from being on the treadmill, which is why I'm not on camera. But do you all need me to stay for the rest? For
I
anything
think
else?
we're going over minutes.
I'd love to stay. Okay, I'm going to sign off.
I have one member item if you're interested.
No, I'm good. I'll let you guys do your business. Thank you so much, and I'll do my best to stay in communication and help out how I can. Thank you so much, guys.
All right,
Thank you,
you.
Renee.
Whatever I'm supposed to
Thank you,
say.
Renee.
Okay.
Thank you, Renee. I'm going to sign out too, folks. Thank you very much for everything.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Good night.
Hi,
Okay.
Steve.
Bye, Steve. Okay. So other than minutes, is there anything else anyone wanted to bring up tonight?
I just had one item.
Also the meeting schedule, don't forget.
Yeah, the meeting schedule. How about we resolve that quickly?
Sure.
So, Linda, your main concern, I believe, was, well, first of all, most of us leave our Mondays free. And your question is, what do we do about holidays when they fall on a Monday? So I see on the schedule, there's two of them that have been bumped to Wednesday, which are January 20th and December 15th. And I don't have a problem with that. Does anyone else have a problem with those occasional Wednesday meetings?
As opposed
No.
to going to the next Monday was my question.
Nope, that's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
Okay,
matter to
so
me.
Wednesdays. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And will you send that list out, Linda, or should we just put it in our calendar now?
No, I will post it on the website and I could send it out too.
I think we have it.
It was in the packet. It was in the packet, Dave.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I saw that, I didn't pay attention much to what all the dates were.
They're all Mondays, which you presumably leave free, is that right?
Yeah, and every night.
Yeah, our schedules have gotten a little lighter with this whole COVID thing, hasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
All right, so we're good on schedule. Can I just bring up my small item?
Go ahead.
All right, I've been walking around down towards South and State, partly as a result of looking at the South property. And the lights down on that Chase Bank, they're massively, they're so bright. And my question is that okay? I mean, did we already grant it approval that they're that bright, or are they just that bright and we don't care? But if you walk by there at night, it's pretty stark. And if I was living across the street, I'd be ticked off. Now, whether or not it's been approved and it's already in record, then so be it. But is there anything we can do about that, and should we talk about it?
Chase Bank, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chase Bank changed all their lights without a permit.
Okay.
They had
So
a violation, and they had a violation notice from the building inspector.
okay.
And they did this in the middle of our site plan review. So I have a bit of a hard feeling about this because they came in before us quite a while ago. We said your application's incomplete. We said we want to see your lighting plan. We want to see a few other things. And instead of giving us a lighting plan, they just changed them. And we told them in advance of what the code required, and they just did it anyway. So I don't feel a lot of sympathy for them when they're in the middle of a review. We're asking for things and they're kind of bypassing the process after they've been informed what the process is.
Okay,
Said, last I heard, Steve did not find any records of the violation notice for lighting.
So we shoot another one?
I think some of this is up to Steve for how to enforce it, because when we did our site plan review, we never concluded the lighting portion of it. We asked them to submit the lighting plan. And I think some of the things we expressed as a concern, like some of the lights are at an angle and that's not allowed by code. It has to point straight down. So I think this is a matter we've been waiting for them to apply to us, and they just haven't. And the building inspector has some tools I think they could use to cope with this, but I don't really know where they're at with this.
I think our residents deserve some action here. And so what do we do about it?
May I jump in?
Please.
Okay, so this board can't do anything about it. The only thing this board can do is respond to applications that are before you. But I switched that. Ask Steve to undertake it. We could ask Steve to undertake an enforcement action because it is a code enforcement issue.
Okay, so then what we can do is simply ask Steve to take a look into the lighting and to see if it's an issue, and almost from a resident perspective, not a board perspective, say, could you address this? It's a violation of lighting ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, so individually, away from the board, if all of us were to send Steve a note and say, hey, Steve, can you do this? But we're not here as a board to point out violations.
No.
Okay, so we choose not to do that. And the conversation from a board perspective, this is over. Right?
So I think, I like what Mindy says, we're waiting for an application to show up. And until then, it's the building inspector's issue, but we're free as individuals and residents to talk to the building inspector and point out concerns.
Okay. And I guess this is just a procedural question then. So when they go forward with the changes as they did with the parking lot, there was concerns that we had with regards to lighting, and they just chose to do something different. And at that point, like, it was out of our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So if we choose to not enforce stuff, a whole lot of stuff can get done differently than what we hope.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
Yes, that happens, which is also why it's not a good idea to approve part of a plan without approving the whole plan. We had the same issue happen at 50 State Street. They came in before us to change the parking lot, and they did a lighting plan, and I guess planned to change the pond, and they didn't do half the things they promised they would do. They never finished the lighting. They never cleaned out the pond. They planted a few trees and repaved the parking lot, and it kind of ended. So,
okay. So the board itself, the village board, could point out violations, or like, does any board have an opportunity to point out violations? Is that purely a resident input to the building inspector?
It's really a resident input to the building inspector issue.
And at that point,
I mean, the board shouldn't. The board really should not be interfering with the private, with the independent exercise of discretion of the code enforcement officer.
Okay. Okay.
So the trustee, he does talk to the board of trustees before moving forward with violation notices from time to time. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but I think these people can get something like $100 a day fine for violations, and that fixes things pretty quickly. But a lot of times they want to give a notice and allow people to get things corrected on their own without being egregious with fees. And the courts, I don't know where, I think Mindy's opinion in the past was you shouldn't speculate on what the courts are going to do. You should just follow your process. But the courts, I hear, are not always inclined to go along with stiff fines for people for minor infractions. But that's not that's a whole nother enforcement issue that's well beyond this.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave, for bringing that up. So that brings us to meeting minutes.
I had some comments on the October 19th meeting minutes.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull my copy up, but I've already looked over these.
I can't hear you, Justin.
So I'm still trying to bring up my copy of minutes, but I have looked over these before.
Okay. Well, do you want me to wait until you pull it up?
It'll be just a few seconds here.
Okay.
All right, I got it up. Thank you.
Okay. So for the October 19th 19th meeting minutes on page 2. The third and fourth motions have resolution 2020-3 question marks. We need a resolution number there.
Sorry.
Okay. And then on page 3, the first paragraph, the last 2 words, Canal Corporation should be capitalized. Do you see that?
Yep.
And then the last 2 motions on the same page, on page 3, Justin made a motion, seconded by Joanne, to approve the subdivision application and issue a neg deck. I would just ask that the issuance of the neg deck precede the approval of the subdivision application. Because technically we need to do seeker first. So, I mean, it's just a little tiny thing. So if you can just switch the order of those things. So member of Lestra made a motion, seconded by member Shannon, to issue a negative declaration of environmental significance and approve the subdivision application for 3638 State Street. And then the same change in the next motion with respect to 40 State Street. Just start with the neg deck.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
And that's all I had with the October 19th.
Thank you, Mindy.
You're welcome. And then for October 29th, I think I popped into the meeting, but I didn't stay, so I don't think it would be correct to say that I attended it.
Oh, 10:29. No Mindy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone else have comments? Let's start with the October 19th minutes.
Okay by me.
I thought
Okay.
they looked great.
Okay, I'll make a motion then to approve the meeting minutes from October 19th with the revisions mentioned.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, we have unanimous consent. Let's go to the next minutes from October 29th. Are there any additional comments?
Nothing here.
Oh. Okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 29th with the revisions mentioned tonight.
Second.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, another unanimous consent. Thank you. Is there anything else that we to go over?
Susan's got some.
I have one quick thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, so in regard to our LWRP review of the ATP, we worked, really hard on this and took it as, read it as a plan. And I feel like a little sleight of hand occurred when the trustees began referring to it as aspirational. So I just kind of wonder about the standing of something that comes before us that is aspirational. that seems kind of not in the spirit of looking at a real plan. And I know that, you know, we agreed to it, but I have kind of this lingering, you know, that we agreed to something or made a consistency review on something that kind of toward the end of the process was now referred to as aspirational. So I don't know, is there anything, who knows if we'll ever have a future situation like that, but just what I've said this before, what I love about planning is that you're looking at something, you're in the concrete world. And anyway, I kind of regret my, I don't regret my, well, maybe I do regret my vote.
Well, I would say the comp plan is a similar way, and we're aspiring to complete this. But we heard loud and clear from Trustee Stetzer is the actual details of how to solve these things were beyond the funding and beyond their time requirements. Then I think she mentioned that, look, if we're going to put bicycle lanes on the road, does that mean we're going to get rid of trees or we get rid of parking spots? There's a lot of moving parts. So I think the way she expressed it was we aspire to put bike lanes on the roads, but it means when we get into the planning details, we don't know what that's going to require. However, I agree with you, Susan, that couldn't we have come up with a clear way for people to get from one side of the village to another via bicycle and included that as part of a plan? I think that would kind of be a prerequisite.
I mean, it just kind of cast a different light on the whole, you know, kind of value of this, of the ATP, of this plan. You know, if everything is aspirational, and I think that's a very handy way of categorizing some things that are right before us. I don't see what's so aspirational about some of them. But anyway, maybe this is just, I'll get over it.
Go ahead, Mindy. It sounds like you have some wise advice for us.
You're right. More
Well,
wine.
I mean, planning, I think you did the right thing by taking a good hard look and taking your charge seriously to do an LWRP review. And I think that the idea of a plan being aspirational is a poor choice of words in my opinion. And the reason is because the plan ought to provide the framework for code changes that implement the plan. And if you don't do the LWRP review at the time that you make the plan, then you run the risk that the planning document itself is incomplete because it has not fully considered the important values of the community as set forth in the LWRP. So aspirational, I'm not so sure. I mean, it should be a comprehensive overall general direction for the community. And it should provide the basis for concrete legislative acts that implement the recommendations of the plan. And for that reason, it's important to do the LWRP review in connection with the plan adoption. So I think you did your job. I think that you did a great job, and you can feel really good about it. But you're not the legislators, so you don't get to decide how it's implemented. And if the legislators are going to say that, you know, this was just aspirational, we don't plan to implement it, then why'd they do it?
Right.
Right?
Right. And sometimes things were not stated in terms of a recommendation. It was stated in terms of this is a problem area and we're going to have to look at it. But okay, I'm done. That's it. You know, 2021 will be free of, you know, my comments on this.
Mindy,
Hopefully we won't have any more long planning document reviews in 2021. I think we've gotten the entire term's worth of them in the last couple seasons here.
Yeah, you're right.
I just had a quick follow-up on Mindy's comment. I had a question. So it sounded like, from what you were saying, this is considered as part of the comprehensive planning process where legislative changes need to take this into consideration. Is that correct? And is it considered at the same weight as a comprehensive plan and just an extended part of it, or is it a lesser weight?
Yeah, it is considered part of the comprehensive plan because, I mean, the statutes don't really say that the comprehensive plan has to be the document that's titled the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive, you just need to show comprehensiveness of planning in order to have valid legislation that implements the community's wishes and desires. So part of the comprehensiveness of planning can be policy documents that are not called comprehensive plans, but deal comprehensively with issues across the entire community.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Does that help? Yeah.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
I believe in their motion to approve this, I believe their motion was to amend the comprehensive plan to include this document.
That makes sense to me. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Mindy. The only other things I was wondering about is what do people think about that 29 state or South, or was it 29 South application? When I heard at the HPV meeting, they seemed pretty upset because they thought that this was going to get the green light as soon as they amended their plans. And they were a little concerned that additional concerns kept being brought up. Is there anyone that thought that we could have handled this a little better or differently, or any other thoughts as to what we could have done?
I think that there needs to be a process where we clearly set expectations right from the first contact with Village Hall. And I guess it's not under in our purview to make those recommendations, but I think that if we do a good job of describing why this review process exists at Village Hall, and if there is not an expectation that is set that something will pass or that the ask is minor, it's going to streamline and set more proper expectations. So I wasn't there, so I can't really judge to what extent that happened. But it does seem like there was not an alignment of those expectations in the HPB meeting.
So I think part of this was, I think when the first meeting we had them at, I think we had pretty cordial and friendly conversation. And I think that's normal. We don't want to have unpleasantness in our conversations until that's appropriate. So if we ask them for more information, we ask them for some changes. If they happen to interpret, some cordial conversations as being a sign that it's going to get all approved, that might be a little bit of a bad expectation on their part, but I don't know what to do on that. Go ahead, Dave.
I don't think it was us in terms of what was guiding some expectations for what they were able to do. At the very tail end of their discussion with the HPV, Steve had referenced his misunderstanding of the lot coverage relative to the gravel surface of the driveway, and the fact that he initially had not considered that to be an impervious surface. And so his calculations of lot coverage, and you may recall in our meeting, he seemed rather taken aback by our addressing that issue as directly as we did. And I think in the first meeting, we did bring up quite directly the lot coverage, and then quickly referred it to the HPB for comments, as well. And I think that was the right thing to do. I don't think personally that any of the boards could have done much different. I was surprised a little bit as to the depth of the work that was done before they came forward to ask for a lot coverage variance. The setback was seemingly minor, in all honesty, compared to the lot coverage. So you know, their disappointment, they may have taken ownership of it personally and emotionally. I don't know how much cost it is to invest in drawings like that. So I don't know if that was a big investment as much as it was emotionally, but I think they came into our meeting with higher expectations, and it wasn't us that changed those. And I don't think it would have been fair for us to have been more direct in suggesting it may not go forward in that meeting. We asked for additional information, put it to the next board. I think we did as much as we could. So personally, I thought we did a great job in that meeting. People spoke their mind. We shared concerns and we referred it.
Okay. Thank you, Dave, for the feedback. I know in the first meeting we had mentioned, we talked most directly about the variance for the lot line or for the setbacks, and there were no big concerns of that. And so really the only thing that's changed since that first meeting is we got more information about the lot coverage, and we got a lot more discussion over the lot coverage thing. And we got the dimensions of the addition and started looking at it in more detail. And the more detail we looked at it, I think more concerns came up. And so we had a good discussion at our last meeting about this. So I thank everyone for moving that forward.
And if you do go back,
ideas get shared.
In the former meeting, though, even in the very first one, before we got the additional information, there was discussion among us of lot coverage even then being a concern. So I don't think it might have not been as loud as it was in our special meeting or direct, but it was certainly evident.
Yeah, this is something that I'm not even sure where I land in all of this, because when I first saw this, it looked like a fairly simple application. And the more and more I looked at it, the more questions start coming up, and the more, what do we do with this starts coming up. So I think all of our opinions evolve a little bit as we look at it and get more information.
Yep.
So I don't know where this is going to go. Based on the comment earlier, Dave, I heard you loud and clear that your lot even if they made it one story, you're still concerned about lot coverage. I know you're not making a definitive opinion or decision yet. We're still keeping an open mind and we'll look at it. I think that's good to note, because one of our concerns was visual impacts, and making it one story may impact that. That was also the HPB's concern. And by me saying this of various people's concerns, I'm not sure if everyone on the board is in complete agreement. These are just various things that have been addressed by people, and I suspect we're all in a situation of not knowing exactly where this should go if we were to pin ourselves down to a vote. So we're still seeing as to how this plays out, still listening, still going, but it seems like it'd be useful to have some communications with the HPB about this. And if there's still concerns about the lot coverage, it may make sense to communicate that to the applicant, that they could look to at least reducing the size of the addition a little bit. If they reduce it too much, it might not look right. I think all of this comes into play, where if you're just going to make it an extension of the current addition where the line is the same. So right now what they did is they created a new gable, and I think there's a minimum size for what you'd want a gable to look like. So if they were to put on a 5-foot addition, you wouldn't present that as a new gable, you'd present that architecturally different. However, a 5-foot addition might look like an addition, it's the extension of the house. So based on how much they extended, it might make significant changes to their architecture and their drawings and so on. And I don't think any of us know exactly what ideally we'd like to see. I'm just sharing some thoughts here. If anyone else wants to speak up, please go ahead.
I don't think, I think guidance is one thing, but I think what we would like to see is, kind of way beyond our job. They've, and we were very consistent, the boards, and I think that was, yay. That was, kind of, been doubly disappointing to the applicant, but they could not have been surprised. We talked about these concerns, right from the get-go, and And so, I understand their disappointment, but I don't think it's us to say, to make too specific suggestions. They've got to look at the code like everybody else does, and come up with their plan.
Yeah, well, I think they've heard concerns loud and clear, and
Yeah.
their architect hopefully will have some idea what to do.
I was going to say, an architect, I would find, in a village like Pittsford, which is, all, designated historic region, I think he could have been a little more inventive, with what he did. And, he just did the biggest thing possible. And, maybe he should have been a little more aware. Maybe that's asking too much of an architect, to, know who you're dealing, know what your chances of success are going to be. I don't know.
I've heard of this architect before. Oh, he's worked in the village before, so
Right.
I don't know what that whole interaction is. They're working for their client, so we'll see where this goes. But I appreciate it, Dave. You mentioned earlier that even if you went down to one story, you're still concerned about the lot coverage. I think that's good to know that that's a significant concern of people on the board. We'll see where this goes.
That was also something that did come up in the HPB meeting as well. They mentioned as part of the community character, having a yard is part of that, and with the coverage that was changing, that no longer really existed there. For kids playing there and everything. And actually, in this case, there is a playground that they would be tearing up to put the addition on. So I think that's one of the continuing HPB concerns as well.
Yeah, I heard that. That kind of makes a little bit of sense that you want a functional backyard.
And there was a comment Lisa had made at one point, just speaking about mass and scale and coverage. She had at one point made a comment, maybe there's something you can do within the existing addition, right? And almost it was this inference that they weren't even sure if an addition of just one story would be appropriate for that lot. So there was enough even doubt in their mind, I think, on doing something beyond the existing addition. However, if something were to be presented to them that they felt was an architecturally like an improvement on the property, but required some variance to the lot coverage in order to improve upon its historical character, then in that instance, we may look at it differently than the initial drawing that was before us. So anyway, just some thoughts.
Mindy, maybe you can chime in on something. When we think about the variance for these things, we have to consider the size of the variance as to whether it's significant. And that becomes kind of a numbers game. Do you have any recollections as to kind of how the courts have cited on that and what is deemed to be a significant change versus not? So if our lot coverage is 25%, and we're going up to 35%, it's almost like a 50% deviation from the code.
Yeah, the short answer is there isn't any bright line rule. There's some places where the courts are fairly consistent and draw a line in the sand saying, 35% is enough, 36% isn't. You just don't find that in the case law dealing with area variances. It really is a balancing test in which each of the elements needs to be considered, and the particular property needs to be considered. So I could take a look and do a survey, but my recollection is that they're really all over the place.
Okay.
The smaller the variance, the better. But
well, we're also obliged to approve the smallest variance required to give them relief. And in the past, what things we've said is, well, if they reduce the size of this further, that wouldn't lessen impact significantly. And that may not be true here. However, they have their objective they're trying to achieve, and we haven't drilled into that. They want a larger family room, they need another bedroom, whatever that is. There's a minimum size they need to achieve that objective. I'm kind of reluctant to dig down into there, but that's another finding we'll have to consider is whether or not the relief they're requesting is the smallest that's can realistically be considered reasonable. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Mindy.
You know, I mean, again, Justin, it's really very much a case-by-case analysis. I can't really give you a bright line there.
Okay, I didn't think you could, so you don't need to review it any further. Just if you had any thoughts off the top of your head, that's good. But basically, it's up to us to figure out is what you're leaving it as.
Right.
And the important thing is to explain the rationale for what we do.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments from anyone?
So maybe we're wrapping up, but I just want to say that it's been a great year working with you all. What a super board, right?
You guys all rock.
Right. I think we must be in the Mindy school of of the planning boards. We must be good juniors by now, right?
Yeah.
Sophomores.
You guys are top notch. You really do. You think a lot about what you're doing. You care a lot about what you're doing. You don't just fill in the blanks. And, there's some robust discussion.
I've really appreciated a lot of the robust discussion we've had over this year. I agree. Thank you, Susan, for the comments. And I really feel like we moved together as a group towards better decisions, which through a robust discussion, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
And thank you for being so welcoming.
Well, Dave, thank you for chipping into the robust discussions. You are rarely hesitant to speak your mind, and you have lots of good thoughts, and so that's great.
I'll take that into consideration in 2001.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. We don't have any value for an executive discussion with regards to 75 Monroe to do that again, do we?
So I can just say that I asked Mindy if there's anything to update, and there's not. So.
Super. Thank you. Just wanted to ask a question. Thank you.
And by the way, I thought it was very reasonable for Mr. Powers to sit in and listen to discussion of other houses getting criticized for things being large. So there's kind of uniform treatment to lots of different people around here, right?
That's true.
I
So
had the same impression. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I will be the one to do it. I'll make a motion to close our last meeting of 2020.
Second.
Oh, May 2021 be a better year.
Yeah. Yes.
Amen.
But thank you. I'll vote aye.
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 All right.
Have a great holiday, everybody.
Christmas,
Great
Hanukkah.